Good morning, everyone. I think the topic is future-ready learners. But simple question. Are we really producing future-ready learners or exam-ready learners? So I just want to understand the audience today so that we can also customize our answers as per the audience. How many are educators here? Just raise your hand. Teachers and educators, schools, okay. And how many service providers, EdTechs, startups, giving services? Okay, a few over there. All right. So majorly educators as well. And of course, the stalls at the back. दिख रहे हैं आप लोग भी. ठीक है. So I think the way we structured this panel discussion was a bit, let me give you some background on what we did. We thought rather than giving a 10-minute gyan from each other, from which we all hear in all panel discussions, I decided to make it interesting, a bit controversial. So I picked up topics that I think are a bit polarizing. And I asked our panelists in advance what their answers are to those questions. So I know their answers, aapke answers mujhe nahi malum. So I'd like you to participate. Can you all do that? Just by a raise of hands so that we all talk about this, because these are things which are going to have different and polarizing opinions, right? So with that, because I think the children deserve something more. And clearly our education system is not up to the task. Our speakers are talking about it. We've heard it many times. But I think this panel is going to be very, very interesting. And this is going to make some of you uncomfortable. And that's not my job to make you comfortable. My job is to make you think and go out from this room with some actionable steps as an educator, as an EdTech provider as well. So straight away, my first question is for the audience as well. So we see these ads, every May, you see the same ads of schools mentioning their marks, 97% with the photograph. Every year, they replace the photograph, new marks. How many of you feel if that's the way schools are promoting themselves, that's a disservice to education? Raise your hand. How many of you believe, no, that's the right way? Raise your hand. Okay. So I think, Mr. Harish, you straight away agreed with that. But if honestly, we can all say yes, theek nahi hai. But honestly, that's how parents are choosing schools as well. Let's be realistic as well. In the private school market, if I don't highlight my school's marks, parents will move away and go to the school jahan par toppers ban rahe hain sare. Isn't that the honest reality then? What do you have to say about that?
I strongly believe that it's not only the marks that makes a complete outcome for a school, because a school has to do much more than marks. And I think once a child is coming out of the school, it has to be a holistic package. If you're looking only at the marks, then what's the difference between a coaching and a school? A school essentially has to look at a bigger picture, where you need to develop resilience, you need to push values into the children. You also need to navigate various other aspects like critical thinking, creativity, and most important, how the children communicate. So if it is only through writing and doing an examination and getting the maximum marks out of it and then promoting those marks, then I think the school systems will all become invalid that way, because later what will happen is you are only focusing on one particular short-sighted area, and the children will not be able to make themselves ready for the future skilling and the job readiness and what the industry demands. It's the rote content that will come out.
So Mr. Dominic, you also agreed with this, but honestly, that's how parents choose schools, grades, right? And I think I totally agree that, and I'm just trying to be the devil's advocate here. I just want to make my stance clear as well. So is that a luxury that maybe the elite schools can afford to have? We're talking about critical thinking and all that, but the average Indian family just wants a child to get a decent job. And if the grades allow him to get into a good college, what's wrong in this approach of schools? Why they're highlighting marks and saying, come to us, we'll get you into your child into a good college? Why isn't it being away from reality?
So there are a couple of points I would make about that. The first one is the way the examination systems work is actually doing a disservice to the top end of our pupils. So If you think about someone who's going to get 100%, 97%, did they have the capacity to learn much more during their education? As my colleague on the panel has already said, schools have a responsibility to make sure pupils thrive beyond the school gates. So just getting them into the top grades without educating them in a whole person sense is I'm afraid inevitably, particularly in the world we live in now, setting them up potentially to fail because they're simply not encountering stuff that they found difficult. So if you go and look at the mental health statistics at the very top universities, where many pupils have applied, joined the university, they've been very focused on academics. They haven't developed the rounded skills. As soon as you start encountering stuff you're finding difficult, and you will at university, you're going to have some fairly significant issues. I'm also, there's part of this which is about educating parents. I'm very fortunate, as you pointed out, to have very affluent parents, parents who want to access global education. And as a consequence, they're much better informed about how learning and education can really accelerate, facilitate their child's access to these things. And increasingly, amongst that socioeconomic class, there's a real welcome for the whole person education, the rounded education. This is not to say that academics aren't important, but they're just not enough on their own, particularly in the mid to late 21st century.
So Devika ma'am, I'd like you to summarize this for the average educator who understands all these things. We know that's important. We hear the terrible stories of children committing suicide in top colleges. So they are the so-called toppers of our schools. So clearly, this requirement that Mr. Harish talked about also is required. But as an educator, how do I deal with next year? How do I deal with the school chairman who says, I want more admissions in my school? As I want to talk from so you've been a school leader and you are now a trainer as well to teachers and school leaders. How should an educator balance this requirement, which I know as an educator in my heart what I need to do, but market realities also force something different? Can you just help them out with that?
Yep, thank you, Amol. So, just like you said, I'm coming into this conversation wearing two lenses. One lens is, of course, that of having been a school leader for a pretty long time and stepping away from that deliberately to make sure that whatever my work is, impacts hundreds of teachers across the country. And therefore, I am a teacher educator now. So, I can see both sides of the pressures of being a school leader and therefore all the demands that you're mentioning about what parents are looking for. And being a teacher educator, where I can see the struggles that the teachers are going through to meet these kind of demands. Your main question was about marks and exams. And I think both distinguished guests on the panel have addressed that. But marks, they actually indicate just a slice of learning. They do not in any way point to the totality of the learner. So that is something we need to understand. And though these pressures from the parents are always there, it is up to the school to educate the parents. I know it's going to be a slow process, but that's the only way forward to say that while exams are given under a structure, under time pressure, it just gives you a point data, but life is not like that. For life, you need collaboration, communication, critical thinking, agility of learning, adaptability. I mean, the keynote speaker was also talking about entrepreneurship and startups. But, we're not really trying to make everybody an entrepreneur in schools. But I think we need to definitely assure that every child who leaves the school doesn't leave feeling powerless, whether we can create all these skills, the cognitive strength in the child, that's what it is. So yes, marks are a reality. And you mentioned admission to colleges. Well, colleges and job recruiters are going to look for marks because it's a standardization. It's a filter. That's it. Millions apply, so you take that as the first filter. It's not a predictor of success.
Okay, let me ask the audience then this question. How many of you look at grades while hiring somebody? Raise your hand. No,
Good.
one person, two people are honest. Or three people, I'm not saying honest, but three people look at grades. But yet our focus for the first 12 years of a child's education is just grades, marks, so class 12 ke marks. How many of you feel marks are going to be important 10 years from now? The 10th mark sheet. Okay. It will still hold relevance, you feel? Okay, good. So my question is, if marks are so meaningless, and Devika, I'd like to start with you as well straight away.
Yeah.
Why is it even important? Is it just the first college? Because clearly no one's using it for hiring. Then why are we so obsessed in the whole school system for that big, big standardized test which is coming at the end of the tunnel
Yeah.
for children?
Yeah. No, why are we obsessed is, of course, a good question. But unless and until the assessment patterns change, we cannot change much in the curriculum and the way it is transacted in the schools. So, because assessment is driving instruction, Amol, I mean, all instruction in the schools is, if CBSE says something, if the council says something which is expected in the 9th and 10th, everybody brings it down to pre-primary. That this is what we want to prepare the children for when they are writing the 10th. So it's not as if we are actually planning all our teaching based on what the assessment is going to be. So this is going to change only when we change the pattern of assessment, and I think it is happening because, like it was mentioned, everybody is changing the kind of questions which are being asked, and they're thinking that they are actually testing not so much for rote, which was one of the objects of this panel, but whether the students are understanding, comprehending, are able to apply, are able to evaluate, and all of that. So unless and until we develop these abilities, we will remain focused on the end outcome.
Right, thank you. I think, Dominic, you mentioned something on assessments and you picked up, so you want to carry on, add something to that?
Yes. So one of my great frustrations as an educator is the fact I am restricted to the assessments that I'm required to do in order for my pupils to apply to university, in order for my pupils to go on and apply for jobs. That is the truth of the matter. Earlier on, we talked about two antagonistic aspects of education. This idea of instilling lifelong learning, creating enthusiastic, effective lifelong learners. At the same time, the word evolution was used. We are not at a point where we need evolution, we need revolution. The arrival of AI, open access AI, means that the world is going to change, the economies are going to change. It's a huge disruptor. It's much bigger as a disruptor than the Industrial Revolution. And look how that changed society. So the pace at which policies have moved along is not fast enough. If we go back, I was talking to some of the delegates about the NEP 2020. You go back to 2020, where was open access AI at that point? And look what we've learned about it so far, and yet we haven't really adjusted to the fact it's here.
So, Mr. Harish, I'd like to ask, just add on to that answer, is the problem what we are assessing, because we are assessing memorization, or is it the nature of assessment? What do you think is the problem here now? Can AI solve it?
I think AI has a limitation, and the most important thing with AI is that it can do summative help and all. It can also teach children in a personalized manner, taking course with an adaptive learning. But of course, the assessment itself, I don't think so, should be now only an end term or something that happens at the end. It should be during the process, and how the learning happened and how the information was actually taken by a child and what inferences were drawn. Actually, this leads to a change in the neurotic connections. In the neurons in the brain, there are connections that are made. And that happens when a person is grappling with some kind of problem. And during the process, when we are trying to solve the problem, there is a lot of development of the brain that happens. So it is extremely important for us to shift in our assessments in such a manner that the children are able to log on to the problems, stay with the problem, and in due course, we are able to see the stepwise how those problems were solved and how the learning outcomes happened.
Right. Devika, ma'am, I'll come to you for
Yeah.
this as well. This is something deep. This is like the ideal situation of what have I learned, what have I understood, the deepest learning. Now I can apply this to any part. But are our teachers equipped to handle this? I mean, that's your favorite topic, and you wanted to speak about this as well. I mean, we are thrusting this change upon teachers sitting as school leaders without any support networks. So, what's the problem here in implementing this? Do you feel it's the teachers or is it the policy?
Okay, I think I love to get back to the classroom all the time. And I think whatever reform you talk about, whether it is skill building, entrepreneurship, employability, AI, whatever you are talking about, or we'll continue to talk about, the entry point is into the classroom is always the teacher. You cannot deny that. It has to be through the teacher. The teacher, to my mind, having traveled the length and breadth of the country and seen diverse locations, I think there are similarities in terms of every teacher wants to do well, wants to do good. But teachers don't resist change. My belief is that teachers are reluctant because we do not support them through the change. If we can evolve a system where we are continuously supporting the teachers through the change, they would be more than willing to learn. That's one.
And the most common reaction we get from teachers is, "Na, ab ye bhi karna padega." I mean, is this?
Let me answer that. ये भी करना पड़ेगा उन्हें इसलिए लगता है क्योंकि आप उसको एक एक्स्ट्रा लेयर बना के उनकी तरफ ले जाते हो. There is nothing extra. So about assessment, which was mentioned, I think, and also marks, why are we, I think all the focus needs to be only on formative assessment. That's my belief. And there has to be no marks and no grades for formative assessment. Formative assessment, the key component of that is you assess, you get a feedback, you diagnose. Where is it that this child is lacking? And then you go in and you remediate, you accelerate, and whichever is the method that you adopt. My belief across the country is that we lack, I'm saying we because I've also been a teacher, we lack the ability of diagnosis. Why do we lack this ability of diagnosis? My belief again is teachers are not familiar with what we love to call prerequisite knowledge. What is the PRK required for introduction of the new knowledge? If we can only focus, and I'm saying this with a huge, huge appeal from this stage, if we can focus in making sure that the teachers have already identified the PRK required for introduction of the new knowledge, we'd be doing a great service to this country. And all PRK, this might sound a little radical, is nothing but vocabulary. Vocabulary of all the subjects, and I can talk ad nauseum about this off the breaks. But that's what we have to do, and we will be having teachers who are doing good, and assessment would be in place.
So is the problem the people or is it the lack of tools to assist the people? Because doing this in a class of 50 kids, pre-knowledge of each child, I understand you, for example, I should know where each audience member is and accordingly customize my talk, but I cannot do it. I'm like, I'm addressing 50 kids, it's like giving a YouTube lecture to the whole class, right? So how do I personalize? Right now we're going back from assessment to the content delivery, right?
Please don't use the word lecture. So in a classroom, it should definitely not be like a YouTube lecture.
Correct.
And I think what we've across the panel, you'll find that what we're really talking about is moving to low risk assessment, so there can be a dialogue, a learning dialogue with each pupil as an individual. Now, you might say 40 or 50 pupils, how is this going to happen? Well, actually, we have the answer in some of the AI tools which are emerging already, which can be used to inform the teacher and the pupil about how they're getting on. The inevitability of it, though, is that humanity does well because it works together. It's very, very rare for an individual on their own just to be able to learn something. And in fact, being able to provide a classroom in which there is social interaction about the learning, social interaction about the content, is a much more powerful way of making sure there's a depth of learning. I'm lucky, fortunate enough to be able to teach across 4 subjects, so maths, physics, economics, and business. And in all of those subjects, it has been one of the pedagogies I've used is to get very strong students to actually engage with the less able students. And what I found is both pupils benefit from this, because the very bright, very sharp, the very quick learner often learns very superficially. And actually, it's the questions that come from the less able student that really require them to peel back their own
and
knowledge.
go deeper into their learning.
Yeah, I'd just like to give an example here. We were looking at the literacy skills at the lower segment, and we were trying to develop a Lexile program for our schools. So what happened was that we went deeper into it. We came across a very common problem that the children were facing in grade 1 and 2. So when they were given a question in mathematics, which was a word problem, they all were generally trying to do this. I'm going to show you what was happening. And why this was happening is because young children do not understand that reading is for understanding.
Correct.
They think reading in itself is a complete task. So if my mama has said that you read, so they would read and they would say, yeah, now I need to run away to the field to play or this or that. They don't understand that reading is for understanding. So when the mathematics problems were given, like Ramesh went to the shopkeeper with 100 rupee note and gives him for certain goods, and he is supposed to get 60 rupees back. What was the value of the good, or what was the cost price of the good? Something very simple, which has to be done only by plus minus. Now, these children actually in mathematics knew how to add or subtract. But when they were given this word problem, they were reading it, but they were not able to apply the operation of mathematics in it, ki plus or math. And you know what they were doing? Many children were looking at the teacher and they were saying, plus. So, and if the teacher would smile, the children know, yes, I had to do an addition. But if the teacher would frown, no, I have to do subtraction in it. Yes. So the decision of which operation is to be built up in this particular problem was not coming from the content that was read, but was coming from the facial expression of the teacher or mother, whosoever was trying to do that. So what's critical for us as educators at a primary level was that we must see to it that reading is for understanding, and therefore interaction with the child, and to ask what he or she has read, has he or she understood, what is their opinion about it, is extremely critical.
Yeah, Devika, ma'am, I think the
One
points are very relevant. It's
to
not
add to this. So it's true. I mean, all of us, even parents, face this issue about the word problem. And the thing is, it's not just language. It's also you try to get children of a Marathi medium school to solve a word problem in Marathi, they can't do it. Okay, the language, the spoken language and the textbook language is very different. So there is this idea of learning to read in the early years. From there, we move them to reading to learn. Just to repeat, learning to read. From there, reading to learn, because that's where the comprehension comes in. That's one. Second, we have to teach them specific 6-step skills of solving a word problem. That is mathematical, pedagogical content knowledge. Every subject has its own pedagogical content knowledge, and that is what we need to prepare. So there is no escape from teacher preparation for doing all of this.
Thank you. I think we're all converging on the point that purpose of learning and education is what? Marks or a deeper learning, right? So we're all coming there. So since you mentioned that teachers need to do that, I have a question for the audience. How many of you feel that we should link teacher salaries and pay to performance? Any yeses? Okay. Any no's? And how many will not raise their hand no matter what I ask them? Okay. So, this is, can we drive? I mean, one is intrinsic motivation. We all understand, for the love of learning. But if it's not happening, then anyone of you feel that that's the way to break the status quo in terms of teachers and get them to?
So the observation I would make, so we've had quite a long discussion about assessment, and we've decided that the assessment measures we have at the moment are hopeless. So how can you fairly apply a measure that comes from those assessment measures back onto the teachers? And actually, my approach has always been, okay, what we want from teachers is to engage with pedagogy. They want to make sure they're preparing and understanding their learners at a deep level. And so it comes down to the school's policy about how do you provide career and professional development for the teachers? How do they go about their classroom practice to ensure that every one of their pupils is getting the best of opportunities to realise their potential in whichever subject it might be? Now, all of that necessarily requires the senior leaders to get round and make the observations of teachers.
But can you measure that objectively? That
No.
how am I doing? If she asks how am I doing,
You can't, but you can have a dialogue about it. So at my school, we have a minimum set of teaching routines that have to happen. Beyond that, that's the tick. Beyond that, it is a dialogue about, okay, well, given we've both been in this lesson, I was watching, you were delivering. What is it that went really well? What can we build on? What aspects of it do both of us feel could be improved? And that may not be the teacher per se. It may be the infrastructure provided to the teacher as well.
So, Mr. Harish, I'd like to ask you this question about assessments, like Dominic said. Isn't that opening the Pandora's box of favoritism and politics in school, which already happens a lot, where you're trying to now link pay to performance and it's peer evaluation, like Mr. Dominic was talking about? Isn't this more dangerous than the thing that we're trying to solve? Isn't it going to get more dangerous where now suddenly teachers walk off because what we are assessing is not clear? You can't assess creativity of the children. Then how are you assessing? Are you is it fair? And then are you judging me on that? Then we say, okay, fine. Forget everything. Jiske marks अच्छे हैं बच्चे के class के, she gets a better pay. And so is it something that we should strive to aim for, where we link teacher pay to performance in any objective manner? Is that something you would like to try in your school?
So teacher pay to performance is a very difficult thing unless we have the proper matrix related to the performance. Now, developing that matrix is a very difficult task. Unless you have that matrix, you should.
That's what we started with. Assessments drive behavior, right? So now matrix drives behavior. What do you think?
I'd say I'd just caution on this. So back to this is the minimum standard for running a classroom, but providing teachers the opportunity to make the most of their own personality, the most of their own preferred approaches to teaching is really important. More importantly, though, in any school, no classroom exists in isolation. So it is the whole school, the whole teaching fraternity, the whole of the management, the operation. And we need to move to this position where we talk about total education. So yes, of course, teachers, like everybody else, need to have line management in place to make sure that they are meeting the standards. But beyond that, it really is about make sure the whole school is doing its very best, making the most of itself to provide young people the best of opportunities to realise their potential now and to thrive in the future.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, he was
Okay.
And then after you.
So unless we have that, and I was just saying about the matrix because it's extremely important. If you don't have it, then please don't venture into that particular paths where you start judging teachers on the outcomes, and unless the outcomes are very well defined,
then it becomes a Keanu Reeves matrix.
Yes. So that becomes very difficult for any education system, and because especially what happens with the teachers community is that they're high on emotions. In India, teachers community, in fact, not only in India, everywhere.
He's nodding his head, so
very clear.
Yeah.
If you're not very clear with them into your processes, then what happens with a teacher is that a teacher also does stand for a lot of values of the school. And because they're representing a lot of values and they're trying to teach a lot of values to the children, and when they see a dichotomy in your values when you are trying to implement something with them, which also is connected financially, I think that will backfire. So unless you take the whole community together and have some kind of baseline with the proper information and their own understanding that this is the baseline that we would like to meet, and this is how we would like to assess, which has to come from within the community, then I think we should have any system which is going to help in connecting the pay to the outcomes.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just add to that because they spoke about a matrix. I think we have a great framework. So I'd like to call that a rubric. Okay. So we have a great frameworks of teaching work done by Charlotte Danielson that we refer to when we're training, because there are many aspects to the work of a teacher. The danger of linking increments to performance is when you will only tie to the test scores. That what kind of scores is my class getting? Then teachers will fudge. Scores can be fudged. Okay.
And then they'll smile when the
Yes.
look up to them.
But if the outcome or the product is linked to various other outcomes, like, for example, problem solving you talked about, if you talk about growth mindset that Carol Dweck talks about, or if you take certain intellectual behavior traits like persistence or accuracy or responsible risk taking, I think you mentioned risk taking later. And there are many such factors that could be embedded in that rubric. And we watch for that. Then it becomes what he was talking about just now, that is it a picture which is taking the entire personality of the child or not? Or are they rewarding just because you're getting the test scores? Now, getting the test scores alone, that's dangerous. Very dangerous. That will corrupt learning. But taking the overall picture, it will protect learning. That's what I believe.
I'd just add that in terms of protecting learning, mine is a fully residential boarding school, and some of the strategies that we'll adopt, the classroom teacher will have said, well, we don't think this pupil is developing sufficient resilience or persistence. There's a dialogue with the pupil about it. But more importantly, their personal tutor and their housemaster and the residential staff are all aware of this and can all help in developing the particular aspect that needs to be developed.
Right.
And it is that holistic approach of the whole school community moving it along. The other observation to make, and we talked about premium schools, is the proprietor, Jagran Social Welfare Society, who I work for, are very keen to make sure we stick to an average teacher to pupil ratio, an average one of 1:8. And that gives you an enormous scope for having the learning dialogue, understanding each pupil as an individual learner, which I know economically is problematic more widely, but there is a responsibility for us to understand that as a society, that teaching 1 to 50 through primary and secondary education is always going to be suboptimal.
Yeah. So I just want to, a question came to mind about what you mentioned, that accountability is not just with the teacher, it's the school as a whole. So let me ask a question to the audience. Should the schools be held liable financially if their students don't succeed 10 years after graduation? Anyone believes they should be? Nahi, bas padhaya aur class 12th exams and so a few hands are now going up. So just my responsibility is to get them into a college, and then yes, we say nice things in our brochures on our website, but honestly, how many of us even track what our children are doing, except for the odd successful alumni who walks in to give a speech to our students? So is there any call? Do you feel that schools should be held accountable at all? Because parents are paying so much money to schools. Why are schools not accountable for the promise that they give the parent? Anyone wants to feel that
There are hands there.
There's a question?
There are hands on the first table.
I can answer.
So, yeah. Oh, they have extra mics.
Yeah, so good morning all. I'm a national level trainer. My name is Meenu Bhargav. My concern is whenever I go to schools, I go to rural area schools, I go to urban area schools. But the thing is, teachers will always say, teacher training is fine and if mein bahut focus hai, but what about management and the founders? No conference invites them. And the basic problem lies there. They are not ready to change. We try to change teachers. Even the B.Ed institutes don't change, right? Who train teachers? So these are the main things. Parents also, the orientations are going on now so much to orient them regarding the holistic and all that. But what about the management and the founders? I feel in such conferences, they should be invited because they are the ones who are going to tell teachers what to do. When they go for holistic development, they do group activities and all that. The management by chance comes on right around and says to them, why are you doing this? Children are making noise. And we say they are communicating. We are promoting them to develop skills.
Right. Ma'am, got the point. Anybody wants to take the answer?
I think there was a different question you were asking. So
Yes. So question is about
Yeah.
accountability of. So we'll come to that question later on. I think
of schools.
anybody feels that they should be and
This,
feels strongly about it.
There at the back. There.
Just please give a quick answer for that so that we can take multiple opinions.
Just focus on this one. Accountability of schools.
Sir, as you said that should we held responsible the schools for in future if the students are not able to do. I want to point out one thing is that whenever we talk about careers and all, I think the focus of the parents are more into it because we have seen in the generations that we have only taken up certain amounts of careers as in for the success part, and certain careers are not taken in the success. So do you think that the teachers, I think blaming is a more later part. I think should there be a more collaborative efforts from in part of the institution if they can also groom the parents that nowadays there are more career options rather than focusing on only some perspective कि अगर ठीक है मेरा बच्चा अगर साइंस में अच्छा नहीं हुआ तो फ्यूचर में कुछ कर नहीं पाएंगे. So I think there is a mindset of parents which should also
So when
change.
the question comes to that, if you're driving accountability in schools for children's success, won't it automatically push the schools to behaviors like this? Thinking, okay, fine, I can think of now maybe more careers beyond doctor, medicine as the ones. So if I'm held accountable, will it change my behavior? The first statement we started with that, right? I'm just trying to ask you, would
So I think accountability should be more in the perspective. See, हम सिर्फ school को blame करें. I think there should be a collaborative approach in terms of the school and the parents together. Because कहीं ना कहीं the students always have a pressure on them कि कौन सा उनको choose करना है because they feel that
you make the schools accountable, they will change. If we say yes, it should be collaborative, we all agree. We've been saying that for 2 decades. Collaboration between parents and schools, between industry and schools, between colleges. Everybody talks about it.
accountability.
No one's doing it, ma'am. No one's doing it.
There should be a set of rules in terms of, I think, choosing the careers also.
No.
Because I
probably
think
going a different.
Then
place.
you go to inspection, Raj, and everything. If you start putting
here,
things over there.
in case you want to, ma'am, just speak. Just speak, ma'am.
किसको दे रहे हैं? Sir, sample size of 2 is not statistically relevant to make a statement that I'm giving to.
Morning, everyone. I would not like to give a diplomatic answer saying that, there has to be responsibility of parents and society. We have to agree that school plays a major role in whatever child comes up in the future or becomes in the future. And there, I think the school should be accountable for the choices school makes for their students. And I strongly believe that because I've been into the education industry for 25 years. Teachers trainer.
What do you mean schools make for the students?
I will explain it that. So I'm into teaching for almost 25 years, teaching teachers like teachers trainer, author, and in the industry of education for almost 25 years. Even today, when we talk about choices that a school makes, I think most of the choices made by the school are based on how they are going to be benefited and not on the fact how students are going to be benefited. That means the choice which a school takes for their students is it's chosen. So you are accountable for what you are providing to your
that was the first question, ma'am. The school's behavior of showing marks,
Absolutely.
which universities, so the international schools will always show, oh, my children went to Michigan, went to this, right? Because that's what's driving parent behavior, which in turn comes back to the school. So right now, everyone's being short-sighted in their thought process. We all agree, right? So that's what schools
I do agree that the schools are accountable for where
I talk about long-term success.
students are leading.
So can we think of long-term success? Because that's the ultimate goal,
The
not getting
long-term
into the child
success-
into a university.
The long-term success is not a one-time pitch. It is a step-by-step process. We do not become successful overnight. It comes from school, every stage, school life, college life, everything. And the school, major part is played by school.
Of course.
And I strongly believe that the schools are accountable for the choices. I'm not saying for anything else, but the choices they make for the students.
Yeah, at least
And
schools can do that because they are
still
we
making
are
a lot of
informed.
mistakes there.
Yes.
And the answer of about teachers not being satisfied because they are not able to do certain things in the school is also related to the fact that the choices which are made are not student appropriate. So they should be accountable, whether it is short term or long term. I do believe that every step is important in the success of a long term goal.
Thank you, ma'am. I think just one more thing. Since we're talking about future ready, one question for everybody. How many of you think, raise your hand if anybody feels we should allow mobile phones in schools? Anybody feels that? A few hands going up. You feel that? Ma'am? Devika ma'am? No.
It depends on its age.
No, yes or no?
No,
Gun to your head.
Age specific. It has to be, your question has to be age specific. At what age? Because all studies are showing, if you listen to Andrew Huberman, in fact, what they're saying is that if you give the mobile phones at a very young age to the children, they're not likely to be successful in life.
Okay.
So age specific.
What is the answer for that?
My answer is middle school onwards, maybe.
Mobile phones in schools.
Maybe.
Any principal agrees with that? Would they allow it from tomorrow? Sending a circular? Wow, one brave gentleman. So
I don't think he's that.
why are we so scared as educators?
I don't.
Not
Well,
scared.
I don't think it is about fear. I think the most important pieces of research are some of the papers that Angela Duckworth has talked about.
Yep. Great.
And that is not just applying to children; it applies to adults as well. So all of us, and in fact, when I look around the room in here, I can see people using their phones when I'm speaking. So all the evidence says that if you have your phone even on your desk, you're distracted by it.
Yes.
You're even distracted by it when you turn it over, so you can't even see what's going on. So the very fact that it's there is a matter of discipline. And it's a self-discipline that we need to teach to children. I have a good deal of sympathy with the junior end.
Yes.
Because it's tricky for young children to be that self-disciplined. At my school at the moment, we only allow the smartphones to come out at specific times in the evening.
Correct.
Just to make sure that they're not interfering with the day. But I remember the fact that on the laptops these days, even when I try and block everything, they can still engage with one another. So it is about educating young people about how to use devices as tools, how to use them to support their education, support their learning, and not distract, inhibit, undermine the learning. The most important aspect of this, though, is really about, and you mentioned it before, about learning to read. So there's loads of bad stuff about the way that devices interfere with reading. I have a 15-year-old son.
Yes.
I have a 15-year-old son, and he loves his strategy games. So he's a gamer, and he will read tens of thousands of words deeply about the history within the strategy. But if I try and offer him a book, it is like offering him a millstone. So he can read, and the way that he has acquired the reading is different to the way that I acquired.
And if they don't read, that they don't build vocabulary.
That's right. So it is. We give devices a bad rep, but at the end of the day, they are tools that people need to understand how to use, and denying pupils the opportunity to learn how to use them through school is simply going to put them at a disadvantage. But yes, it needs to be very carefully controlled.
Yeah, I think one thing which is very important in coming out here is that we all are afraid of the addiction of cell phones.
Right.
Because we are afraid of addiction of cell phones, that itself is an important
Afraid for the
reason-
children or for us?
both of us as well as children. That is a reason why schools need to engage about with this problem. If we do not engage with this problem, we will never be able to teach our children how to handle it. Now, there are multiple solutions which are coming up. I coincidentally, I was in that conference UK few days back. One of the solutions which they were talking about is that how the schools can handle mobile phones and make them free. Because as a principal, many principals are facing this problem that the children are coming with mobile phones because the parents are saying that my child has to book an Ola or an Uber for coming to school and after getting back from school to home. Hence, we will send the mobile phone because there is no one else. And now unitary families are going up. And therefore, what happens is it is actually a need, and they may be having a very valid reason for getting it.
And helicopter parenting happening.
Yes.
But I
So-
agree that, there has to be literacy about how to handle the mobile phone. But, that is so that we can prepare them, protect them, and still allow them under supervision, under some kind of censorship.
So if we are not ready as a school to handle the mobile phones, then there is a very small solution which is available now for 2,000 rupees. There's a jacket of pocket kind of thing which is coming up, which has a magnetic lock on top. Like if you go to a shopping mall or somewhere, when you buy goods and you go to the payment counter, that payment counter guy just does unlocking of that magnetic tags which are there. So this small purse or a pocket is having a magnetic tag. When the children come into the school, they drop their mobile phones within those magnetic tags and keep it in their boxes only, because it will not open throughout the day, no matter whatever happens. And while going back, on the gate, you can put up those unlocking devices where the children can just unlock and take it with them. And school is not then responsible for keeping their mobile phones. At the same time, what happens is we are able to tell them and teach them how to discipline themselves from curating this urge and not looking into the
But that's the
device.
same as not allowing a mobile phone. Why aren't we
That's
allowing to say,
right.
take the phone and this is how you deal with it?
I
How you deal with this distraction? Agar ulta bhi rakha hai, still how do you deal with it? Why aren't, because we are not able to handle it. So isn't it in a way a similar, you're giving a short-term temporary solution to something where now the question is, has he put it in the bag or not? Get it checked as well. There'll be a whole 40-minute period just
so discipline is what I agree with. And
Discipline is something which is an important thing to be taught to the children, and that's a skill that has to be taught.
No, so even if they're keeping it next to them, how do you manage the self-regulation? The self-regulation which NEP 2020 calls out all the time about how do you self-regulate your behavior such that you are not going to pick up that mobile phone until asked to. So that's something that I would like to work towards. And I know
that's a society problem. When parents say, my child doesn't read, we ask the parent, do you read? They say, no, I do this all day.
Yes, I mean,
right?
that's a
So we're
different
doing doom scrolling all day.
That is
Right?
different.
If someone is addicted to smoking, the first thing that you do is you don't ask that person to leave smoking immediately. If people go in for a addiction
scaffolding.
camp, there is a scaffolding structure. There is
You scaffold it.
Yes.
You scaffold
So
that
what I'm
level.
trying to say is that you need to develop methods of helping out to the children, and then you have a whole program on it. And this is one step to the
The whole program is interesting because, otherwise, the other question is, which is probably not related, but it maps to discipline, self-preservation, security, and protection against a digital device. Similarly, discipline, self-preservation, and protection. Otherwise, why do we have sexuality and gender education in schools? We need not. But we do it.
But the devices are going to be an important part of personalization and AI. That's what is going to be a personalized learning device.
Yes, as long as you teach them how to use them and when to use them and how to protect yourself against the ills of the digital device. That's what we're getting.
And that's the problem is they know more than us. They're natives. I mean, we are still trying to figure out what will happen if I click this.
So we learn.
So how can we teach children how to use a device when they're better than us? So is it something even
I don't
realistic?
think they're better than us.
Okay.
I also don't think that they know more than us. Their knowledge is very superficial and
That's true.
informational. They're not deep. They will not be able to, like the keynote address Mr. Patankar was saying, that they were not able to solve something of a calculus, is what he was mentioning.
Probability, yeah.
Yeah, probability. So it's very superficial. They know a lot about everything, but nothing very deeply. We need to be on top of the tools. The tools can't be on top of us.
And that's a situation which Mr. Dominic also mentioned, right? When somebody's interested in content, these kids, they are ready to go deep into the same kid who cannot sit in a 40-minute lecture can play a 4-hour video game of Fortnite non-stop, right?
That's all about
The problem is not the attention, the problem is what we're telling them and the manner in which we're telling them.
The
right?
interest. It's the interest which drives them. So create the interest in the class. Create the hook that they're so interested in even geography. That'll happen if you know the pedagogical content knowledge of geography. I'm back to the same thing. let's get into the classrooms. Everything enters through the teacher. It enters through how is she creating that interest in her subject. And that's what we have to do ultimately for all subjects.
And I'd just add to the fact that our education system is structured. So we encourage people to learn more and more about less and less until they know almost everything about almost nothing. And in the era that we as a society, as a species, as humanity are entering, that's something we need to move away from. And it's much more important really to instill an understanding of how to learn effectively. And I agree, one of the teachers' primary roles is to instill interest.
Absolutely.
And without interest, you end up with the dopamine fix from Fortnite, which might, as my son, when he was 10, pointed out to me, you are stopping me practice from Fortnite, and I want that $2 million prize. But moving them to be interested in things other than just gaming away, other than reeling away on Instagram, is part of education's role and part of every teacher's role.
And I hope we can do that. And thank you so much, everybody, for this interesting panel. This is exactly what I was looking forward to, something provocative, getting the hands up from the audience, getting them to start yelling out questions and complaining, why aren't we getting a chance? So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I think the purpose here was to make everybody think, because if we do not think, we're doing disservice to not just the children, the teachers, but the future of the country as well. And the country deserves that. If we don't think, if we stay in the status quo, if we feel my school's grades are excellent and everything is good, then the price of this will be paid by the future, and the price will be paid by the children as well. So thank you so much, everybody. I think, ma'am, time is up. So I think the audio...
No, just that we
but
are
again, as a last...
Mandapam, and that's this collective conscience of the nation. And what we are here for is nation building, really. And it's not, doesn't matter which tech or which app or which new worksheet you take. What we need to do is redefine the teaching, the role of the teacher, to make the difference in the schools. Thank you very much for having us here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.